Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the live broadcast of the 60 feet 6 inches LSU podcast for the instant analysis of LSU's first SEC series as they went on the road to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. Thank y'all for joining us. So if you're viewing this on the 60 feet 6 inches LSU Pod YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe for all the content. And as always, the Twitter account is at 60FT6IN LSU Pod. And as always, a reminder, I'll post this link on the Twitter account to YouTube and podcast versions. So as you can see, joined by two guests here. First up, Alex Day. We've had him on the live broadcast before, but Alex is from the Weekend Rotation podcast. Alex, how you doing? Let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, Chris. You guys can find me over at Radio Man Day, part of College Baseball Central. We have our Weekend Rotation podcast. We do our live show every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And then, we got stuff coming out throughout the week over at College Baseball Central on Twitter.
That sounds great. And Alex just coming off vacation. We were talking a little bit about that in the kind of the green room section. So he was listening to some of the game yesterday on the tarmac, I think, when he texted me. But we're also joined by Matt Beard. So Matt, LSU fan, but he runs the Spittin' Seeds account, Spittin' Seeds 247 Twitter account. They put out a ton of great content. So Matt, welcome to the live analysis, and why don't you let everybody know where they can find your stuff as well.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. The Twitter account is just my personal one is LSU MAB11, and then me and two other Tennessee fans. Actually, I'm the lone LSU guy in Knoxville with two other guys that help run the Spittin' Seeds 247, and we just three dads that kind of have a love for college baseball and like to have a little fun.
Yeah, and they so I'd encourage everybody to go follow both these guys' stuff. They put out a ton of college baseball information, and just like a lot of people out there, you can see us interacting on Twitter. We're just trying to grow the game, especially now the SEC baseball play has started. A ton of great series we'll get to at the very end. But if y'all are just viewing this for the first time, or for those maybe listening back on Monday, the way we're just going to do it is we're going to go through each game, maybe not in a ton of detail, just kind of what we thought were some high points and low points for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Always keep your questions and comments coming on. My son's producing the show, Jackson DeMuy, back there in the background. So he's keeping track of all the questions and comments. And so if it pertains to a particular game, once we get to Saturday or Sunday, we'll then throw y'all's questions or comments up on the screen, and each of us will give our take on that. So let's get into it. LSU travels to College Station. They take 2 out of 3 on the road from the Aggies. The Sunday game went very long, so I felt like there's a mad dash to get everything ready for the live podcast and the live analysis. But Alex, I'll go to you first. So if I told you on Thursday, LSU is going to take 2 out of 3 from the Aggies, ranked anywhere from 11th to 15th in the country, would you have taken that right off the bat, no matter if I told you how those games looked or how they played, but you taking that to begin SEC play?
Absolutely. You're always going to take a road series win in the SEC. Maybe today didn't go maybe quite the way we wanted to, and we'll kind of get into the specifics on that later. But, you win 2 out of 3 on the road at College Station to start your SEC season. No complaints there.
Yeah. And Matt, just to get your opinion on that, if I told you, we'll get into the SEC later, kind of like a little SEC rundown, but if I said, Ole Miss loses 3 on the road to Vandy, Tennessee may even get swept. So if you could take the Tigers right now on Thursday, I'll give you 2 out of 3. Are you taking that as well?
I'll take 2 out of 3 every weekend because that's the goal. Yeah. It's a series win, and you're probably going to win the division and probably the entire SEC at that point coming into the tournament. So yeah, 2 out of 3 all day.
Now, do you think, sticking with you, Matt, to me, after that game, sitting here watching it with my son, it's coming down to the wire, that Sunday game after LSU dominated on Friday. Then Saturday was an interesting game. Do you feel like that series – and that was one thing I want to do here. I don't want to get into just a prisoner of the moment, right? I know this is a rapid reaction show, but, I think we can all take a step back and look how well LSU played at times. But do you think that almost feels like a lost series, or you still feel the same way, Matt?
No, I think it was an important series because you go your horse on Friday, you get a big time win, you establish game 1 right there. Saturday, you have to fight through some adversity, something different that you haven't really faced for the last. When's the last time they played a 9-inning game? It's been a while, so they get to fight through that, and then Sunday, I know LSU fans aren't going to like it, but that loss is not going to make or break the rest of the season. So it's an important loss to maybe learn from and hopefully be like, hey, we don't want to feel that away again. So,
yeah, it's Alex, do you think those guys walking off the field? I know me probably as a player, It almost like you'd rather, like, you don't want to lose any game, but almost feel like you'd rather get blown out as opposed to giving it away at the end. Now, Texas A&M, they stayed in it. They didn't give up after the 4-run first. But do you feel like, a lot of fans are going to think, or you personally, do you think it almost feels like a lost series, or do you think you let one slip away right there when you had a chance to get a sweep on the road?
I mean, yeah, you did let one slip away. You had a chance to get the sweep on the road, and that would have been great. But I mean, like Matt said, in the grand scheme of things, this loss isn't gonna crush it. And even the win, even if we got in the win, right, that's not gonna make or break the season. So, you try and learn something from it. And if you're the players, especially maybe Christian Little maybe a little bit down on himself or whatever, but
Yeah.
you just got to flush it and move on. Bad days happen. It's baseball.
It does, and especially when you look around the conference and the country, really, for that matter. It's college baseball at its finest, and a lot of teams have seems like the playing field's a lot more even this year, particularly early on. But let's get into Friday night. Let's just kind of go over Friday night. LSU takes that one from the Aggies 9-0. As you see Paul Skeens get on the mound and absolutely dominate. LSU scores in 3 runs. Really went a long time without hitting. They scored 2 in the first, 2 in the third, and then put the Aggies away with 5 in the 9th. And to me, this game was all about Paul Skeens. And I was really interested to see, he's a veteran, right? He's been in Air Force, but he's new to the SEC. A lot of hype coming in, well-deserved. A lot of people think he's the best pitcher in the country. And he's lived up to that hype. But going on the road in what could be a hostile environment at Bluebell, and he just dominates. So Skeens' line on the night, 6 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, which to me was very important, and then 11 Ks. So when I say that, Matt, let's kick it to you first. What did you think about Skeens' outing on the road Friday night versus A&M?
Man, it's almost like he's loving the whole pitch clock situation because he gets the ball and he goes. And, that I can remember playing and pitching. If you can establish that and get into a groove and a rhythm, you can do what he did last night, which is establish the fastball early, and then they had no chance on any off speed. And then you still had to worry about 100, even though he just threw it twice. So the fact that he dominated on the road and kind of silenced the crowd early and allowed the offense to kind of see the pitcher another time and kind of get back into it with offensively after, an onslaught early on, that was huge by him. So it was a big time start, but it was a big time closing of innings when they weren't doing anything through the offense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, one of the things I said on Twitter, Alex, was that A&M had, as a team, which just shocked me, kind of what I did in the preview podcast, A&M as a team actually walked more than they struck out. So I was really interested to see their approach, if they were going to take a lot of pitches. And I think I personally have seen Skeens really not grow up, but maybe develop. And it's like he hadn't shown all of his cards at once. So this game, you really saw, you're going to see the fastball, right? 2 and 4 seam. But I saw a lot of breaking balls to lefties and then the changeup flash as well. When you look at Skeens' line, 11 Ks, 6 1/3, he's up around 100 pitches. Is there anything that stood out about his performance? Maybe one thing that really piqued your interest when you saw him out there against A&M Friday?
I mean, just how dominant he was, and just how he kept a really good A&M offense that we saw later in the weekend, kind of get going a little bit, kept him down and kept the hitters really confused. And they just, Jim Schlossnagle said after the game, that he's pitching in the wrong league, that he belongs in the American League or the National League.
Yeah.
And that was just on display Friday night.
Yeah, and I thought he did a really good job of there's a couple stats that I always look at, but leadoff hitters, A&M only got 1 leadoff hitter out of the 9 innings. And then after Skeens, I know we're focusing on the pitchers here. You saw Nate Ackenhausen come in out of the bullpen. He went 1 1/3 innings pitch, no hits. He did struggle a little bit. He's been very dominant so far, 3 walks, 3 Ks, just a little up and down with his control, and he fought through it. Then you saw kind of Christian Little come on, and he was efficient in his short outing on Friday night. He threw an inning in the third with 1 K. Trying to keep today out of it. But if you focus on Ackenhausen and Little, Alex, we'll start with you. Do you think those two guys have really separated themselves in terms of the pecking order of the bullpen early on in 2023?
Yeah, if you're just looking at Friday, then, absolutely. Little got the save. Ackenhausen came in and was, like you said, a little up and down, but in the end got the job done. And, and then Little came in, he had some guys on base, but, got out of the jam and, and slam the door as he has, most of the season. So.
Yeah, Matt, what do you make of, Ackenhausen was kind of the forgotten man in the bullpen early in the year, or even he didn't get a lot of hype coming into the year, and I kind of forgot to mention him too. You had Riley Cooper coming back from the left side, Bryce Collins, who we thought was going to be a factor early on. He did a good job last year, and obviously a lot of hype surrounding Christian Little. Grant Taylor gets hurt, but what have you thought about Ackenhausen so far coming out of the pen? I think a lot of people have kind of tagged him Nasty Nate on Twitter. We tried to get that hashtag trending. But, Matt, what do you make of Ackenhausen so far early in this campaign?
I love it. I love seeing a lefty. As a former lefty myself, I love seeing a lefty come out of the pen. And it almost reminds me of last year. It's almost like Riley Cooper coming out of the pen, with seeing him come out of there. Sometimes, if I'm walking by to grab something to drink, I'm like, oh, that's Ackenhausen. You might think it's Cooper for a minute. And, don't forget, Cooper started the season in the rotation. So, it's hopefully I think he's trying to get back and get to where he can go every day as well. And if we can have two lefties out of the pen like that, that's going to be dangerous. Throw in Little right there with, I guess, he's got a closer's mentality the way he was talking to himself today. So, I love seeing that. So if they can get all that rolling and you can have those lefties and bounce them back like that, back to back, day to day, it's going to be important to the rest of the season, especially going into postseason.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people wondered what Cooper's role was going to be because he started, obviously, early in the year. He had 2 starts, and then he seems like he's kind of bounced back into the pen, and you saw him come out there today on Sunday, and he bounced back. He had an outing as well, not his greatest outing, I think, but I think you're able to piggyback those 2 guys. They have kind of similar styles, right? They're both low 90s with a good slider and kind of a similar arm angle. They're actually roommates, so go figure. And I think Ackenhausen's been a big addition. I was actually surprised we didn't see him today, really. I thought we may see him on Sunday, but we'll get to that game later. Now, focusing on the hitters, LSU jumps out to a 2-0 lead. LSU was facing Detmer, A&M's ace. And the biggest thing to me when you look at this game, they got it going early, which was important. I thought if they could score a run or 2 early, see Detmer maybe drop up his pitch count, get on the board on the road, kind of silence that crowd, let Skeens get settled. I thought that was going to be important. So they scored 2 in the first. And you really saw this game, LSU was led by its leaders in terms of, Morgan and Cruz, Dugas, and Tanks. But the new addition to me, now this surprised me a little bit. I want to get y'all's take. When the lineup rolled out on Friday, we saw Kling, who was in the leadoff spot, Morgan Cruz, White, Dugas in the 5-hole, but Pearson kind of makes his triumphant return to the lineup. It had been Joe Bear a lot of times. Matt, what did you think of when you saw Pearson get inserted into the lineup in left field? Did that surprise you? Were you happy to see that? Just give me some thoughts on that right there.
Oh, I was ecstatic to see that because Pearson was so huge last year for us. So, and it seemed like the tougher the competition, the more he rose to the occasion, and that seems to be the case once again. I think he's just a gamer. Some guys are gamers, and he seems to be a gamer, and I love seeing him out there because he seems to be a guy who comes up in clutch situations and makes something happen usually. So I love seeing Pearson out in the outfield.
Yeah, it's almost, Alex, kind of similar where he came on the scene last year. I don't know the exact time Pearson really kind of inserted himself in the lineup, but it almost seems like after him this weekend, I saw a lot of good at-bats for him. But did you expect to see maybe Joe Bear in that spot when you were maybe thinking ahead on Thursday? It seems like Jay Johnson's a little unpredictable. I feel like I'm always wrong. But Pearson in the lineup, were you excited to see that or kind of wondering why Jay pulled the trigger there on Friday?
I thought it was definitely an interesting choice as somebody who hasn't played much in the pre-conference, but certainly, like Matt said, has proven himself last year to be a solid bat and somebody who is a veteran on this team, who's been through the SEC. And, Joe Bear, he's had some inconsistent at bats. There's always been a lot of swing and miss. And, he's been trying to cut down on that and hasn't, had mixed results on that. So I wasn't surprised to see Pearson, but, I thought it was a good move. He just wanted a veteran bat in there who's been in these kind of situations. And then Pearson proved him right.
Yeah, I think, and this was the lineup for the rest of the weekend, right? Paxton Kling had a rough weekend. I'll kind of get into that maybe a little bit when we touch on the Sunday game. But I think looking at this lineup, to me, I think you can switch Dugas and Kling from the 1 to 5 hole. But this looks like I've talked about this all season in terms of the length and the depth of their lineup, to where you just don't really want to see, once you get to the 6 hole, just a lot of designated outs or guys hitting 200. And then when you look at Neil Thompson, they were struggling before they came into the weekend. And I think they had a pretty good weekend overall. Hadn't had a chance to tally up all the results. And then obviously we know what Jones did. But I think this is going to be what you see moving forward. And then the only probably moving piece to me may be Joe Bear in the outfield, I would think. So on the day, when you look at LSU's 9-0 victory, obviously we talked about Skeens being the man right there. He really got LSU off to a great start. LSU saw a slew of lefties coming out of the bullpen after Detmer finished his night for A&M. And really on the day, when you look at it, I had talked about veteran leadership on my preview podcast being really paramount to their success this weekend, being on the road, being against a ranked team, the potential environment at Bluebell. But Alex, if you could just talk about that middle of the order and some of the challenges it presents when you have, on Friday night, you had Morgan with 2 hits, Cruz with 2 hits, Tommy Tanks had 2 hits and 3 RBIs, Dugas in the 5-hole, like it just doesn't stop. A hit and an RBI, and then Pearson, 2 hits, 2 RBIs. You know, that's, what is that, 1, 2, 3? That's like 6 guys right there in the middle of that lineup that are veteran and experienced. You know, what have you seen from those guys? Maybe just a difference in terms of approach or focus level this year for the Tigers, and when it comes to the middle of the lineup, especially on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, having Cruz, White, and Dugas all hitting back to back is just like, that should be illegal. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that, because those guys are just, I mean, they're just different. And, you know, when you look at what Cruz and White specifically can really do with 2 strikes, right, and how they really have, you know, they really lock in with 2 strikes. They get in that low crouch, they shorten their swing, and then they're ready to just immediately pull the trigger. And they don't make it easy on you. You gotta, if you're gonna strike one of those guys out, you earned it. They're not gonna give it to you.
No, there's no doubt. And Matt, I don't know about you, but when I look at those guys, and kind of to touch what Alex said a little bit, their approach to me, it just seems like they're not scared to hit with 2 strikes. They're okay taking pitches. When I see them take pitches, a lot of them are like down the middle. I'm like, why didn't you swing at that pitch? You know, specifically with Cruz, or even, do you like the fact that Cruz is kind of bookended by Morgan and White, or would you change things up right there in terms of the way they've kind of set the lineup up the past couple games, and then this weekend with Morgan, Cruz, White, Dugas? Do you like those 5 right there? Or 4, I guess?
I like Dugas in the leadoff spot. I think Kling got a little rude awakening a little bit. I think there were some times where he thought some counts were maybe his advantage, and he thought he knew what was coming. And then it's an SEC guy and kind of spins one on him, so gets him. I like Tommy White where he is. I like leaving where he is. The thing that makes Tommy White so difficult is his approach is fantastic as far as a 2-strike approach, but he lets the ball get so deep that it doesn't really matter what you throw him. By the time he's putting bat on it, the break or the movement's pretty much done before it gets into the mitt, and he's still able to drive the ball to the opposite field with power. We've seen it. We know what he is. Dylan, you know, you got to trade Dylan. I think you keep right there. I think Dugas just fits in that one spot for some reason a little better because of the veteranship, because he goes and hunts a fastball early if he wants it. I think Paxton was a little on his heels this weekend, thought he had to see too many pitches. Go get it. Like, go get it. There's plenty of guys behind you, man. We'll knock you in. Yeah,
it's and you really saw that, I thought, Saturday and Sunday. He looked like he was guessing. You know, I think I have the stat right here. So Kling was 1 for 15 on the weekend with 8 Ks. So not a good weekend for the freshman. So let's see right here. We got a comment coming in. So let's see what Hunter says. Curious to see where Kling settles before. I'm curious to see where Kling settles, because before SEC pitching, he was absolutely blistering it. And that's a great point, and I'll bring it up now, and I'll ask y'all now. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but it's fine. On Sunday, I really thought on Sunday, I thought 2 things were going to happen, and this is to your Matt. You can take this one, Alex. I'll kick it over to you after Matt answers. I thought you may see Joe Bear, because Cortez is a righty. You knew he threw mid to upper 90s, and he flashed that, but he had nothing else. So I thought, 1, Joe Bear could potentially run into one. Maybe he takes Kling's spot, or you take Kling, you bounce him down to the 7-hole maybe, and then you move Dugas up. Were you surprised on Sunday to see Kling maybe not get a break? or take it easy, or putting down the lineup to where he didn't have to have the pressure of leading off, Matt?
Yeah, I thought that he would get moved because Jay's usually in the past, he's willing to move that lineup early, pretty, at the drop of a hat, so to speak. And the fact that you'd done it the first 2 games, I was surprised to not see a little bit of a switch up there, or maybe even a complete change of the lineup. But, it is what it is. Hopefully, I don't think this is indicative of Kling's level of play moving forward. I think maybe it was just like hey, they'll throw you some stuff different when you're not expecting it. So be ready, because the guy's too good. We've seen it, and there's a reason why he's had an opportunity early on. He obviously could do it in the fall, so I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think he'll bounce back too. And Alex, throwing it to you, were you surprised to see Joe Bear maybe not bounce into that lineup, or at least Dugas move up to the leadoff spot? Because, and you know this too, and a lot of people may not realize this, and I know, Alex, y'all talk with Matt on your team. He's the Oregon State guy. I have a ton of respect for A&M's pitching coach, Nate Yeskie, and he caught my eye at Oregon State, and he really throws – you see this more now, especially at the big league level, but he's not afraid to throw any pitch at any time. And you saw today he busted righties hard in from the get-go, no matter who came onto the mound. And it seemed like Kling just, like you said, Matt, he just couldn't figure it out, in or out. What are they going to do with me? So, Alex, were you surprised to see Kling batting leadoff today on Sunday as well?
Yeah, I was. I thought maybe he would, he batted lower in the order, 1 point earlier in the season. Yeah. And that's kind of where I thought he would be today. But, obviously, that's where Jay Johnson wants him to be. And I think, I love the potential of it. We saw what the potential of it was, last weekend against some lesser competition. And once he figures it out, it's going to be, it's going to be awesome again. And, I saw on Twitter, there's a Mikey Mata from on the Mic'd Up account. Mm-hmm. He tweeted that, don't forget Alex Bregman had a 4 for 41 slump, his freshman year. So, right. It's going to happen. He's a freshman. I think Jay Johnson's just going to let him work through it.
Yeah, it's I'm sure there's a balancing act, right, between confidence or, especially with freshmen, making sure you don't, destroy their confidence or you pull them. But you saw it with Jared Jones, right, where he sat down for a couple of games and he went on a tear when he came back to the lineup. So I'm sure midweek pitching will be much more to Kling's liking. And like y'all said, I think Neil has a little bit different of approach. Neil, it seems like he has almost just a veteran approach. And you've seen that at times from Kling and Jones. Maybe those guys have a little more swing and miss in their bat. But, I love the fact that LSU went out there and got game 1 in dominating fashion. Moving on to game 2, it was an interesting game, as LSU takes game 2 of the series. And I said in the preview pod, if LSU lost the game, I really thought it was going to be this one due to the fact that A&M had Troy Wansing from the Purdue transfer, a left-handed pitcher going up against the Tigers. I didn't think it was going to be 12-7. I definitely didn't think it was going to be that. And it seemed like early on, LSU, the fact that they left bases loaded a couple of times, and Wansing seemed to start every hitter 2-0, and then he all of a sudden would figure it out and go bam, bam, bam. So Wansing on the day was 2 2/3 with 6 walks and 4 Ks. And I thought that was going to be LSU's death knell, really, the fact that they couldn't drive any runs early in the game. As A&M jumps on Ty Floyd as they score 2 in the second, 2 in the third. And I said this a lot on Twitter. It was very obvious to me. It's not an excuse because both teams had to deal with it. But, Alex, did you see the game? Were you able to see the game, or were you traveling on Saturday? Were you able to see the game?
I was traveling, but I was still watching and / listening to it on my phone, off and on.
I got you. Do you think I had a little bit of an issue with the zone? I'm going to say it. So did you think that zone had anything to play? Like I said, not an excuse. Both teams had to deal with it. But do you think that had anything to do with early on some of the issues that Wansing or Floyd may have had in terms of their consistency?
Yeah, I definitely think that factored into it. The zone, not only was it tight at times, but then there were other times where it was not tight. And so that inconsistency is definitely hard to deal with. And, Kendall Rogers on Twitter, from D1 Baseball, he didn't mince words. He just he called him out on it. And I mentioned on Twitter earlier today that I felt like that we're talking about umps and squeezing pitchers and tight strike zones a lot more this season than last season. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like that's more a topic of conversation this year than last year. So I don't know what maybe the emphasis on the strike zone is different this year than it was last year. I don't know, but that just seems to be a topic of conversation more often.
Yeah, it obviously being an ex-pitcher, I want to see a little bit given on each side of the plate, but it definitely seemed like, Matt, that this guy's zone was, I'm going to call the white only. There is no black. Look, and I'm going to say this, it was from both sides. Wansing I thought he was pretty wild. He had a lot of stuff in the dirt, especially his breaking ball. I thought Floyd was missing by inches at most, millimeters on some pitches, especially his outside fastballs. And to me, in terms of Ty Floyd, Matt, did you think the zone affected him? What did you think of his outing as a whole in terms of Floyd? And I'll just give you his line real quick before I get your comment. So on the day, Floyd goes 3 1/3, 4 hits, 5 runs, 3 earned. He kind of was a little bit of his own worst enemy in one of those innings, 2 walks and 3 Ks. So when I give you that line, we've talked about the zone and whatnot. What did you think about Floyd on the day, Matt?
Definitely not his best outing of the year by any means, but I'm a huge Ty Floyd fan. I've been a huge fan since day one. I think his stuff is next level. I just don't know that he's truly unlocked it yet. He has taken a huge step this year, but the ease at which he throws a fastball and the fact that everything comes from there is not a difference in anything. He repeats his motion so well. And I do think the zone was obviously tight. I was like, is this a major league game? Because it was right there. But I think he allows certain things to get to him maybe than other guys do. I think that, the zone was tight, but instead of just going, okay, that's the zone, it was like, oh man, I should have had that one. And I think it affects him just a little bit more. I think that's the next step in his evolution, is that moving on from the next pitch. Because you've got the stuff, dude. You're throwing 96 with ease. You'll be fine. Just pitch to what you know.
Yeah, it was interesting. And that's an interesting take. It does, obviously everybody gets frustrated on the mound. And and you're right. He is so close to unlocking it, because as we've seen, he does have 4. I know a lot of people still harken back to he only has 1 pitch for a strike. And I'll get on my soapbox for a second. He has 4 pitches for a strike, and he's thrown them. He has a fastball, a changeup. He's added a slider, which is filthy. And this was the frustrating part to me about Floyd. And once again, I know Wes Johnson, you got to trust in Wes Johnson, right? I'm not going to question anything he does. And my son and I were talking about it, but it almost seemed like he reverted back to the Ty Floyd of last season. But I think some of it had to do with the zone, to where I think they just said, you know what, screw it. This zone is terrible. And we're just going to live and die with 94 to 96. And if they hit you, they hit you. It almost felt like they didn't want to take a chance on falling behind with breaking balls, because he flashed a changeup a couple of times early in the game. And then it looks like they just went away from it. And still with the fact that in the SEC, you can throw 94, 96, almost probably 90% fastballs, and still have the line he has is pretty impressive. But Alex, LSU goes down 4-0. Floyd is scuffling a little bit, but then all of a sudden the offense comes absolutely roaring back as A&M just sends on an army of lefties. Wansing leaves and Aschenbach comes in. He's another lefty. I don't know if anybody has more lefties than A&M. But you see, as LSU plates 6 in the top of the 4th, Thompson and Neal single. Then there's 2 outs, and we've talked about it before. Cruz walks. Then LSU goes nuts with 2 outs, right? White singles on an 0-2 pitch. Dugas, Pearson, Jones, all singles to drive in that runs. Once again, they just get back to the lineup. What do you think? Once you saw that, I don't know, just talk about that little sequence right there, because that is just truly impressive for them to just explode with 2 outs. Then White gets a hit, as Matt talked about earlier, with 0-2. When you saw that, I don't know if we can say anything more. It's early in the season about that part of the lineup, but what did you see when they saw it, when they just exploded for 6 runs right there to take the lead versus the Aggies?
Yeah, there's no breathing room for the pitcher. It's just, guy, dude after dude after dude after dude, and you don't have any opportunities to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, they're going to crush it, no matter who's at the plate. And so you have to be perfect. And if you're not, they're going to let you know. And, one of the crazy stats from that game was that the top 3 hitters in LSU's lineup were 1 for 14. And LSU still scores 12 runs. there's not many teams in the country where their top 3 hitters can go 1 for 14 and they can score that many runs.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, you bring up a great point, and that leads us – it's a great segue, Alex. So, Matt, one of those guys that led the way that day is freshman Jared Bear Jones, and he comes up in the 6th. He hits a massive 3-run home run. He gets another 2 RBIs in the 7th. So on the day, Jones was just 4 for 5 with 7 RBIs. I mean, he exploded onto the scene, scuffled just a little bit, but now in SEC play, but now he seems like he's rolling again. What have you seen from Jones this year? And do you like him hitting in that 7 hole towards the bottom of the order as well?
Absolutely. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And what better person to have in the 7th hole, especially in the SEC, if you think, all right, now I got through Tommy, I got through Dylan, I got through Trey. Jared Jones is at the bottom. Dang, so make it as difficult as possible. This lineup has the ability to turn over quickly. So the fact that you're worried about possibly a good hitter being later in that lineup, they'll get to him, and he's probably still going to have 3 or 4 at-bats in a game, especially with this lineup so far. I think it's important for him, as good as he is, to be in this lineup with these guys. This is going to allow him to still see some pitches, and they're not going to be able to take anything off when they face him, because as soon as you roll back after him, the lineup flips back over. So you're going to have to go after him. So it's going to be fun to watch this kid. Hopefully he stays where he's at and continues to hit the ball well.
Yeah, I said it today, but I think when you look upon a sequence like they had right there in the 4th inning, I put this out on Twitter, really talking about today how LSU – I was just watching some of their at-bats, and we've mentioned it several times, but as a former pitcher, I told my son, I was like, these guys would crush me, because they extend at bats, they foul balls off. Matt, you mentioned they're not afraid to get jammed and go the other way. They're not afraid to get down in a hole. They trust their approach, and they just extend innings, and you can't take a breath. Like you said, if you got, Thompson's a proven commodity. I know people kind of go up and down on Thompson. Neal has a veteran approach at the bottom of the order. But then when you look up and if you have Pearson and Jones, 6, 7, those guys can run right out one out of the park on you very easily. But it's just a tough lineup when they're all clicking. And like Alex, you said, even when the top 3 aren't clicking, the ability to score runs. But besides Jones, I think now this guy's been the hero of the day a couple times. But, Matt, what have you made of Garrett Edwards? So Edwards comes in relief of Ty Floyd, and to me he really settled the game down, right? It was kind of back and forth. Obviously, LSU had pulled ahead, but, A&M was still making some noise. But Edwards comes in for Floyd. He does a great job. He goes 3 1/3, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, 3 walks, and 5 Ks. And I've said this before, but I was surprised Edwards came back this year. I just didn't know where he was going to fit in after seeing and hearing about a ton of these arms in the fall. But what have you made of Garrett Edwards coming out the pen so far this year, Matt?
I love it. I mean, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking player of the game is Garrett Edwards. I know the game got out of hand, but he allowed it to get out of hand because he made some big-time pitches, big-time strikeouts in important situations, getting out of innings. He's been fantastic. I think he's a guy who can eat up a ton of innings for you, but important innings, not just, we've played a long weekend. We need a guy who can go eat innings. He can go eat important SEC innings when things don't go so well for a starter. He allows a guy to maybe get out of there quicker. He allows Jay to pull that hook quicker so the confidence isn't blown on a starter, on a weekend guy, because we got him to go, 3-4 innings. So I think it's important, and I'm glad to see him come back and do well. Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing about this pin so far is that you've seen Edwards. It's almost like he's the fireman, right, Alex? He's come in, he's got it at jams. He feels very comfortable in that situation. But then you saw him really get extended in this outing. His velocity's increased. He's worked a lot with Wes Johnson on his arm path after having some shoulder issues. And then he pitched with like a torn, I think, MCL last year. So he's finally healthy, and he's 94-95 with that wipeout slider. What have you seen with Edwards? And do you think he's kind of that get out of the jam guy moving forward? Or do you think he maybe transitions into a different role, in your opinion, in the bullpen?
No, I think Jay Johnson likes him right where he is. Jay Johnson said after the game that, he's our stopper. He's the guy. We need somebody to come in, stop the bleeding. That's Garrett Edwards, and it's been awesome to see. I like you. I thought Edwards and Helmers were 2 guys that were gonna transfer, but it's great to see, the development from Edwards, and that he's going to stick it out. And he's like, if I can pitch here, I pitched here my freshman year. I know I can pitch here. And, he's done the work and improved, and it's hard not to root for a guy like that.
Yeah, no, I've been thoroughly impressed with him. And I was sitting by Matthew Musso, one of the last scrimmages during the spring. And he really impressed me with his outing. He's 95 to 96. And with that slider is very hard. And I walked away from that outing being like, man, that guy is going to be a dude in the bullpen this year. And he's proven that so far. And I think he's been invaluable to LSU right now. And then, LSU wraps up the game. They win 12-7. You see Blake Money come in, give up a run, but he gets an inning in. You haven't seen him throw a lot this year. After Edwards, I do need to mention that Cooper came in. So Cooper goes an inning and a third, 2 hits and a K. He looked it was good to see him get back on the mound again. Every time I see him, his new haircut kind of throws me off. I think he needs to get the long locks back. But you really saw Saturday, it was kind of a change to where it wasn't the vets carrying the team really. It was kind of Tommy White and Jared Jones. Everybody hopped on their back. They account for 10 RBIs. LSU scored 12 on the day. And then that brings us to today's game. I think everybody wants to focus on today's game. It was just kind of a bit of a mess, and you see Thatcher Hurd take his turn on the mound. And I was looking forward to seeing Thatcher throw the fact that, he was dominant against Southern. No, he had that Monday game, and then last week he threw on Sunday as well. So he threw twice in a week. I thought Monday he was dominant when he threw, I think, against Butler that Monday. Then on Sunday he threw against Sanford. Wasn't as great, but he had thrown like 70 pitches, 5 days earlier. So I was really interested to see how he threw today. And once again, a little bit of an up and down outing from Hurd. Alex, what do you think about Hurd on the day in terms of his outing?
Yeah, when Hurd struggles, you can tell it's when he loses his fastball command. He's always got that breaking ball with that ultra high spin rate, and that's usually working for him. He's got pretty good command of that, pretty much always. But when he loses that fastball command, that's when he starts to struggle. And you saw that today, at times. The strike zone was a little bit better today than it was yesterday. But he just couldn't quite. He was battling. He was up there. He was trying, but he just kept falling behind A&M hitters. And A&M, coming into this series, they walked. I think you pointed out in your preview, they were walking more than they were striking out. So this is a team that was going to grind out at bats, and that's exactly what we saw.
Yeah, I thought much along those same lines, Matt. It didn't seem like, he really was fastball changeup. And he's got a very nasty slider, but it seemed like he had zero feel for his slider today. So on the day, Matt, Hurd goes 3 1/3, 4 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Obviously kept LSU in it because the Tigers jump out. They score 4 runs in the first today. He gives up a solo shot to Moss, I think, and with 2 outs, a solo shot in the first. You got 4 runs. I don't care. That doesn't hurt you. That's not going to lose you the game. LSU scores 1 in the second. But what did you take away from Hurd's outing? And I guess, what have you thought about Hurd on the year?
He's been kind of, he's been a little here. There hasn't been a lot of consistency. He's had some good starts. He's had a weird start, starting on a Monday. I think that may have contributed a little throw off here or there. If he can get into that rhythm of Sunday, I think he'll be all right. I don't think it's an indication of who he is as a pitcher. I think he feeds well better on consistency. So that might be kind of, he comes from UCLA. Savage pitching coach that is about as rigid as it gets outside of Vanderbilt. So, a guy like that who has the stuff that he has, and to be able to pitch on a Sunday to maybe where you're either going for the sweep or you're trying to save a series, you got to find an important role and find out where you are as a pitcher, and hopefully he does that.
Yeah, I think there's been flashes of his, what the stats at least said in terms of UCLA, and you've seen how he can be dominant. It does seem like he's fighting himself a little bit. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of confidence. And this is something else, right? He's a sophomore. Okay, so I've never been to conference games on the West Coast, but I can't imagine they're as rowdy and as well attended as they are on the SEC. So he's still having to deal with that. Still getting used to the conference, and he's just probably fighting himself a little bit, and maybe a little bit of lack of confidence when everything is not clicking for him. But the good thing is the Tigers, look, they got out early on Cortez. Cortez coming into the game, the starter for A&M. he's going to be a mid to upper 90s fastball. But when you looked at his stats, I think he had 17 and a third innings pitch coming into this game, 12 walks, 17 Ks. So he has great stuff, but he was also prone to wildness. And you saw that early on as LSU takes advantage from 4 runs in the first, and they really don't have to do a lot. Kling strikes out. Unfortunately, he continues his trend. But then you go a walk, then a tailor-made double play back to the pitcher. Cortez fumbles it, and he commits an error right there. Then you have another walk with bases loaded. Then Pearson comes through with a two RBI single. Jones Ks to end the inning, and then you have a 2-out RBI single, I think, by Thompson right there as LSU finishes off the inning. And Matt, I don't know about you, but I thought at that point early in the game, I'll put it on Twitter and it looks stupid now, right? I'm sure somebody hasn't thrown it back in my face, but I thought they were going to 10-run rule these dudes. I thought they were rolling early. And Cortez goes out the game. I think he only threw like an inning and a third or something like that. What did you see early from LSU, and did you think it was just going to continue throughout the game like I did?
I never, especially with A&M, because they have taken – I mean, I remember last year that after that first series last year, I was like, A&M's going to be a tough out because they're pesky. And they play like Schloss coaches, man. They completely identify with their head coach. They are just going to fight you tooth and nail. So when that lead got to where it was, I didn't think that was ever going to be a problem for them. Sorry.
Yeah, I was on the flip side of you. I thought we were going to steamroll those guys. So, Alex, I don't know about you, but look, it's 5-1 heading into the third. Hurt's struggling, but he's doing okay. He gives up a run in the third, really, unfortunately, from his own doing, as he gives up a single, a K, a fly out. Then he gives a 2-out single. Then he goes wild pitch to give up a run, but then he works out of it. Thoughts before we move on to this kind of the mess that it turned out to be? Thoughts early in that game? Did you think LSU had a chance to run away and hide? Or did you think they were doing just about as well as they could? You know, Hurd was kind of battling some things. LSU put some runs on the board, but how did you feel early in that game today?
I mean, early, I had the same feeling you did, Chris. You know, I thought LSU was going to continue off of the momentum they had, you know, from the last 2 nights. The offense was just going to keep rolling. And, you know, that it didn't really matter if the pitching struggled a little bit because the offense was just going to keep rolling.
Yeah, it's and then it just kind of turned into where it stopped. So A&M takes out Cortez, and this guy was the MVP of the game. They bring in Lampkin. So Lampkin, doing my preview, the only way I know this is because I was doing my preview. He started Tuesday at Houston. He threw 4 innings, right around 70 to 80 pitches. And I didn't think he was going to throw this weekend. They actually said on the broadcast that he was not supposed to throw, that they were going to start him again on Tuesday. I'm sure LSU fans wish he wouldn't have thrown. So Lampkin comes in. He goes 4 1/3, 4 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, 1 walk, 5 Ks. But more importantly, LSU scores 4 in the first, 1 in the second. Then they go 3, 4, 5, 6, and they don't score anything. They get nothing going. Lampkin's absolutely dealing. He works around a hit here and there, but he's really striking a lot of guys out. So, Alex, what did you think, one, about Lampkin? And I know a lot of LSU fans point to it. Do you think LSU has trouble hitting lefties, or are the fans just hyper-focused on lefties, and that's just a college baseball thing where any lefty that's going to throw 92 to 94 with a slider for a strike is going to be tough to hit?
You know, I certainly think that, you know, in college baseball, like you said, you know, with lefties that have that kind of stuff, that, yeah, they're going to be hard to hit. But I don't think this entire lineup struggles with lefties, but I do think there are certain hitters that struggle with lefties. I mean, right now, Jones is under 100, batting under 100 against left-handed pitching. White is under 200 against lefties. You know, and we're talking about your two of your biggest bats struggling with left-handed pitching, while Cruz and Morgan, they do pretty well they do fine against left-handed pitching. You know, but if your 2 of your biggest bats are struggling that much against left-handed pitching, it's going to stall your offense a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely hurt today. Now, Matt, LSU was definitely, I put this on Twitter, it felt like they were just living on the edge. And you said A&M's going to struggle. That's how Schlossnagel from TCU, that's how he coaches. And that was their approach, right? When I looked at their lineup before the weekend, nobody really scared me, but you could tell they're just going to battle, foul pitches off. And that's how they're going to beat you, right? They're going to get on base, move guys over, and have some singles. And that's how their big innings happen, when they string together hits. But So after Hurd exits, Cooper comes in. He gets a massive 1-6-3 double play that he turns himself. But after that, he's just not himself. He just doesn't look right. He gives up 2 runs in the 5th. Cooper goes 2/3 of an inning, 2 hits, 2 runs. Everything's 2s, right? 2 walks. And then Shores comes in. And Shores, I was shocked. So, Matt, 1, what did you think of Cooper's outing? Because we kind of sung his praises early on. And then 2, Matt, what did you think when they brought Shores in? Because I was not sold on them bringing him in, but he kind of proved me wrong.
Yeah, I think Cooper, maybe was a little worn out this weekend after. I know he didn't throw much the day before, but he's had like we talked about earlier, he's had a weird kind of start to the season, being part of the rotation, then kind of jumping in the bullpen. I think he's just trying to get a rhythm himself. So I think he, that was where he was trying to fight. And I think with Shores, man, coming in, 96, 97, 98, that's next level stuff. And it was good to see, and it was nice to see, because when you saw 100 on Friday if you're A&M, and then you see, 96 from Ty, and then you got the soft lefty, and then it's 96, 97, 98. And that's tough. And it was nice to see him throw well. And maybe he could find himself a role there as a short setup guy, or get him somewhere, because him paired with Little could be nice to see.
Yeah, that was he threw really well today, and I was really pleased by his outing, Alex. We know he's kind of struggled. He's had some started in the weekend, but he really never went really past 3 innings, and even in the midweek he's kind of struggled, mainly with his fastball command, to where you hadn't even got to see some of his good other pitches. Like Matt mentioned, he's upper 90s, right? Can top out at 100. Were you surprised to see them bring Shores in that situation? I think at the time the game was, it was 5-4 actually. So Shores comes in and he gets a massive double play. Did that move surprise you when Jay Johnson made the call to the pen?
Yeah, it did. I was very surprised when they brought Shores in. I tweeted out at the time, I was like, welcome to the SEC, Chase Shores. Like, you're coming in, there's no outs, there's 2 on. You got, a couple of runs have already come in, and you're here to save the day, And he does. I mean, he dealt, and he seemed very comfortable in that role, which is not a very comfortable place to come in. And so that was good to see. It'll be interesting to see how they use him moving forward.
No, I agree. And I'm trying to think. I don't even know if we saw a ton of his secondary pitches, really. I feel like it was just a ton of fastballs. But I put on Twitter, like, he proves that pitchers are athletes, right? He gets a double play, but then he catches a comebacker to end the inning. And then in the 6th, he catches a line drive and he turns a double play. So, props to him for him being like 6'8" and being an athlete. But then in the 7th, I think this is the inning that a lot of LSU fans are going to point to from an offensive standpoint. They finally get Lampkin out of the game. Hogan comes in, a righty, finally, after just an onslaught of lefties from A&M this weekend. But in the 7th, it's 5-4. You see LSU go walk, wild pitch, then another walk, then a hit by pitch. So you got bases loaded. So we get a sacrifice fly from who is that? I can't read my hand. Got a sacrifice fly RBI, and then
from Neil.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sacrifice fly RBI, and then Kling puts the bat on the ball. He hits the ball to right and moves runners to first and third, and then we get a ground out. But right there, I saw this on Twitter where a lot of people said this is the inning LSU is going to kick themselves, because they're only able to get one and extend the lead to 6-4. Alex, did you think at that time only getting one, because A&M did make a change, right? They brought in the righty Hogan. He didn't have it. If they would have left him in, LSU was going to crush him. But then they bring in their closer, really the best left-handed pitcher they have, in Johnston, and he kind of slams the door. But after that inning with a 6-4 lead, did you felt like LSU kind of left some meat on the bone right there, and the fact they couldn't at least get 2 and maybe even broken that thing wide open?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you definitely would have liked to see more than 1 run in a situation like that in a tight ball game. But, it happens sometimes. I mean, typically LSU's been pretty good in those situations. There's just been a few glaring ones where they haven't.
Yeah. Matt, what did you think about that inning right there? If I tell you, bases loaded and you only end up getting 1 run right there with a chance to extend the lead, just kicking yourself after that, or you felt like it was – I mean, I know you always want to get more runs, but, I mean, do you feel like it still would have been okay, heading into the bottom of the 7th right there, or that was just a opportunity lost?
That was a big opportunity lost. I mean, anytime that you get you got an opportunity to score more runs, you go get them. Especially in a game that going the way it is, where runs are tough to come by, and you're kind of struggling. Every run matters there at that point. So big missed opportunity, and that probably is the inning right there that you'll look to and say this is where it started.
No, I agree. And then, as we all know, Christian Little comes in and is just really kind of unlike himself. Is A&M puts some pressure on him. Well, actually, Shores starts the eighth. I apologize. And he gives up a single and then a hit by pitch. And I don't think the guy got hit. He just moves out the way. They didn't review it. But so you have first and second. Little comes in, walks a guy. And as LSU fans, you're like, here we go. Here it's coming. But Little goes back-to-back Ks, and he's got a chance to get out of it. They put a pinch hitter in, the freshman who's been leading off. I think his last name is Wells. Gets the count to 3-2. He draws a walk on a little bit of a high slider. And then I believe Tucker comes up after that, who had a really good game after he got put in the game. He gets a hit. And then Hunter Haas, who killed LSU on the weekend. That guy was absolutely in fuego, the Arizona State transfer. He went berserk this weekend. He gets another hit that drives in the runs, and before you know it, Christian Little, just the damage is done as he gives up a couple of runs right there. So, Matt, what'd you think? Man, what did you think about that inning right there in terms of Little's outing, I guess? They almost got out of it, but as we talked about, really from the fifth, sixth, seventh, and then the eighth, they were just playing with fire, and eventually it comes back to burn them, Matt. Talk about Little's outing in that eighth inning right there.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit too much nibbling going on. There's been a drastic change defensively, much to the applause of LSU fans from what we were last year to this year. We're almost basically worst to first. So I think he nibbled just a little too much. I would like to have seen him gone after a little more in the strike zone. I mean, you've already got the series win. This is a learning opportunity. Let's go after. Let's throw strikes. Let's let the defense work. Let's figure out who we are, because the offense can always put you back in at any point. So let's just go throw strikes. Let's not trying to go away too much and maybe get guys to chase, and we'll just go right after them. Yeah,
Alex, I agree with Matt right there. And you really saw, we know Little's, he's 92 he can bump it up to 96, 97, but he seems to live in that 93, 94 range. Great changeup, really good slider. And it seemed like today, I think they mentioned on the broadcast, he really didn't feature his fastball hardly at all. He's really kind of living by that changeup. And the slider wasn't as tight as we usually see. And he was falling behind, kind of a key for LSU's pitchers today, it seemed like, really. What did you think about Little's outing right there, and the fact he almost got out of it, but in the end he just couldn't get it done, and LSU, as we mentioned, was living on the edge right there. Thoughts on Little in the eighth inning for you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, he was one strike away from getting out of it, and it just didn't happen that way. I think this is the first time this year we've seen him throw twice in a weekend. And so I don't know if maybe that factored into it at all. But that's certainly something different.
That's it. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's interesting you bring that up. So I had a huge problem with, now I'm not saying this is the reason, but it's funny that you bring that up, because I put it out there on Twitter. I had a huge problem with him throwing, I think the ninth inning on Friday. He gets out of the jam in the eighth. LSU puts up, I think 4 in the ninth, right? 4 or 5, and 5 in the ninth. So it's 9-0. The game's over. You can tell A&M's really not coming back. I just don't understand why they didn't let Dutton or Money or Collins or somebody else throw that inning in case you had to bring him back today. Not to say that that's why he didn't do great today, but to me it just didn't make any sense. Now he only threw like 12 or 15 pitches in the ninth. He did well, but it just didn't. I just didn't get that. Maybe they figured he's already hot. Let's just let him roll, or let's just go ahead and nip this sucker in the bud. I don't know, Alex. What do you think about that? I don't know if my theory's way off base, but something I noticed too.
Yeah, I think Friday night, I think I responded to your tweet. Asked or said something to you about, do you think maybe we see Money come in the ninth?
Yeah.
And when it didn't happen, I did think that was a little odd, and maybe that contributed, maybe it didn't, to what happened today. But I mean, if Little's going to be your closer, he's got to be able to go twice in a weekend.
No doubt. I totally agree. Matt, wrapping up on the Sunday game, and then I do have some questions, some things I wrote down about the Sunday game that we can get into, and I think there's a lot of comments about the game and maybe LSU moving forward. second loss on the year. We're definitely not going to overreact. All right, Matt, here we go. LSU struck out 11 times today. When you look at 2-out RBIs, A&M had 5. LSU left 12 runners on base. I know this is a lot, so maybe just pick and choose what you like. This is what I look at. LSU's strike percentage was probably the worst of the season, 55% strikes. That's what the pitchers threw. And then finally, A&M got the leadoff guy on 4 out of 8 innings, and I wrote it down. In the 3rd, 5th, and 8th, A&M scored, and they got the leadoff runner on every time. And in those innings, A&M scored 1 in the 3rd, 2 in the 5th, and 4 in the 8th. A lot of stats, a lot of stuff I threw out you, but that's what stood out to me when you're dissecting this game from a statistical standpoint. Anything right there is just a huge red flag to you. Be like, yeah, we can point to that. And that's one of the reasons why they lost.
Left on base. Look at the other loss we had against Iowa. I can't remember exactly, but we left a ton of guys on base. With this lineup, we got to be opportunistic as much as possible. When you get ducks on the pond, bring them in. Period. Make the pitchers, you remember, make our jobs easier, man. We can go out there and just pound the zone with strikes and fastballs and let that work. So left on base, it's that simple. Yeah.
One of the things I've been highlighting in my pods and stuff is I'm really keying in on runners on third with less than 2 outs, opportunities that present itself and scored. And they actually did a good job today, 3 for 3. But Alex, a lot of stats to piggyback off what Matt said. Any one of those stand out? Look, struck out 11 times, 12 left on base. Pitchers only threw 55% strikes. They allowed A&M to get their leadoff hitter on 4 out of 8 times. In contrast, Skeens was like 1 for 9 on that Friday night game. Anything that you can point your finger to in those stats to say this was one of the huge issues why they lost?
I mean, there's not one thing as to why they lost today. There's a combination of things. There were some defensive miscues that have not been characteristic of this team. I don't know that they actually showed up as errors, but there were just, there was a couple of I think there was one drop double play by
Thompson.
By Thompson. There's White had that wild throw to first base, but so, I mean, there was a lot of things that went into that was just uncharacteristic of this team, right? You mentioned the strike percentage, right? This team's usually a 60 to 70% strike throwing team, right?
Yep.
Today it's 55%, right? And then you've got the defensive mistakes and kind of mental mistakes that have not been characteristic of this team. And so today was just, it's just one of those off days, and it all kind of snowballed on you and led to a loss.
No, I agree. I think it's just one of those games to where if they would have won, you could have said they played ugly. They played bad and they won, but they just played ugly and lost. And in the end, it just ends up catching up to them. One of the things that I was writing down, because I was curious to see who Jay Johnson and them were going to bring in the game, right? So obviously they started Hurd. They brought in Cooper. Shore surprised me, then Little. I'm going to throw this question to both of y'all. Alex, I'll just go right back to you. It seems like they have 4 guys in the bullpen they can trust right now. Ackenhausen, Little, regardless of what you think of his outing today, you can trust him. Cooper, I think he's still a little bit scuffling, but I think in the end, Cooper, you can trust what Cooper's going to bring. And then Edwards, almost forgot, Garrett Edwards. So those 4 guys right there. So Alex and then Matt. Are we short in the bullpen? Like, do they have enough arms or trusted arms in the bullpen right now heading into Arkansas and Tennessee? Or is that something that we've overlooked because the starters have been so good?
I think, when you put it like that, it does feel, like we might be a little bit short. But I mean, I think there's some other guys that, we didn't see this weekend that, can still give you really quality innings. I think Griffin Herring is a guy, as another lefty that, is a 4-pitch guy that could throw some valuable innings for you that we didn't see this weekend. And, Dutton's another guy that, I think there could be some trust in. He pitched some big innings for you last year, and he could be a guy. You certainly you hate to see the struggles from Bryce Collins. He was another guy that you were kind of counting on in that bullpen this year, and he just hasn't had it for whatever reason. But I think some other guys do need to step up.
Yeah, Matt, to you in terms of the bullpen arms, 4 guys that we really trust right now. I know it's still early, right? Your first SEC series. You take 2 out of 3 on the road at A&M, but Did you think the bullpen was going to be a little deeper at this point, or about where you thought it would be, or what's your thoughts on that?
I actually think the bullpen's fine. I actually have a different take on it. I just don't think we've had the opportunity to see him. How many 7-inning games have we played? We haven't had those games where the midweeks where we're playing Southeast Louisiana or New Orleans, where, New Orleans went 9 innings, they agreed to 9. But games like that, those midweek games where you see Johnny Holstaff towards the end of a game, it doesn't really matter on either side. Either team doesn't matter, the winning or the losing team. It's about getting guys opportunities to see who can be there. And I just don't think our guys have had the opportunities to do it. So it's kind of been short right now, but I think we'll be fine. More games we play, and we're going to need them in the SEC play anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I look for some other guys to get some opportunity to shine a little bit. And I definitely think there need to be, if you have those 4 guys you can trust, probably need to have 2 more guys that you can really rely upon, when you get to the thick of SEC play, just because you can't always count on your starters going 5 or 6 innings every time, just with how well these SEC teams hit. But let's get into I think they got some comments that we've been saving up on the side. All right, Eric, here we go. I think we need to talk about Milazzo, since he is a better defensive catcher than Neal. Neal struggled catching balls that were not even in the dirt. Milazzo is hitting the ball a lot better. That is something I noticed from Brady Neal a couple times this weekend in terms of some pass balls. He had a couple of struggles, with pass balls, and that's always tough in terms of, where the pitcher throws him and his job to block them. I think he can absolutely swing it, but you have seen Milazzo getting his opportunities, whether it's bunts or getting a chance to hit late in the game. Matt, we'll just start off with you. What do you think about that comment right there by Eric in terms of the Milazzo-Neal situation at catcher?
I've always been a big fan of Milazzo, and I think he's one of those guys that could thrive in a lineup like this, because I never really cared about the average from Milazzo to begin with. His ability to take away a running game and handle the pitching staff and basically be a wall back there is so incredibly vital, especially when it comes to conference play and when you get into the heat of things. If you got a veteran guy who knows what he's doing back there, I think that's important. And if you get hitting out of him, if Milazzo hits 250 or better, that is massive at that position. And I'll take that, especially with what we know he can do behind the plate.
Yeah, Alex, I think Milazzo is probably hitting right about 250 right now. I'll leave it probably a little higher. I don't have his stats or the everything right in front of me. But, Alex, do you think we see maybe a platoon system, right, where Milazzo may hit against and catch against left-handed starting pitching and Neal versus the righties? Or do you think Jay's going to stick with Neal moving forward, given how Milazzo's done? We've seen him come in late innings, right, as a defensive replacement possibly, but he's done some really good things with the bunt game and then hitting the ball the opposite way. Do you think there's a change on the horizon, or does Jay stand pat with Neal back there?
No, I think Jay's going to stay pat with Neal back there. I mean, I think, I like Milazzo, but I don't think you lose a ton when you go from Milazzo to Neal defensively. Maybe you lose a little bit, but I think that's mostly just because Neal's a freshman, right? I mean, this kid should be in high school right now. He reclassified. Right. He should be a senior in high school right now. And, you talk about the different pitchers that LSU threw out there, especially today with the different speeds and arm angles and locations of pitches and everything, and how it's hard for the batters. It's hard for the catchers too. And so it's a little difficult for him. He's a freshman but he takes really professional at bats. He's really good at drawing walks. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think that, you lose a significant amount defensively. I'll grant you, Milazzo is the better defensive catcher, but I don't think he's that much better than Neal.
Yeah, and I think it's a situation where you saw Neal catch all 3 games, so I would imagine he's going to get a break on Tuesday night, whoever LSU's midweek opponent is. I just hadn't got into that. I think it may be Grambling, so I'm sure everybody will welcome Grambling into town before they take on Arkansas. But it's going to be something interesting to see. I've seen people go back and forth on that in the Baton Rouge sports talk community or on Twitter. It seems like people have their favorites, but I've been super impressed by Neal. Maybe some hiccups every now and then. Look, he does not show a lack of ability to throw behind runners. That's impressed me with his confidence in his arm. And some of that's on pitchers, right, Matt? I mean, we got to do our job too to hold those guys. But what I've seen from Milazzo, I've been very impressed with, in terms of just the injuries and the year he had last year. So let's check out. Let's see if we have any more comments or questions. All right, Eric's got another one here. White's really struggling at third if there's an athletic play to be made. And having Kling at leadoff really took some juice out of the lineup this weekend for sure. I think he's much better at 8-9. So we've touched on the Kling. We're kind of split on that. We think he's obviously has the ability to work himself out of that. We think all of us, I think, believe Jay's going to leave him there. I'm going to disagree with you on the Tommy White thing. Alex, I'll let you answer this at first. I saw him play a lot in the fall and the spring, and I was actually impressed by his athleticism at third. Now, I know he's kind of slipped a couple times lately, and he may now look like that may now make him look athletic. But I saw him make a ton of plays to his left. I saw him come in and make some plays. And I think if you take him off a third, then you got to put Napolt in there, right? So you're losing another bat because then you got to – I guess you probably – well, Trey's out there and left, and you got to do something with Pearson again. So, Alex, what do you think about White at third? And then we've kind of touched on the Kling situation in terms of dropping him in the order potentially. But White at third, any issues or cause for concern with him defensively at third?
No. I mean, maybe he's not, he's not an all-star defensive third baseman, but he's got 35 RBI on the season. I'll take an errant throw every once in a while, or maybe a misplayed rundown, every once in a while. I mean, especially since LSU, is number one in the country defensively.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's not much really to complain about defensively. Yeah, there were a few, like I mentioned earlier, there was some mental errors today that kind of cost them, but that's uncharacteristic. And yeah, I'm not worried about Tommy White.
Matt, your take on Eric's comment, Tommy White at third, good to go, or cause for concern? Obviously, I like Napolt. Defensively, he made some really good plays. Obviously, trouble with the bat, which actually surprised me. But that's another conversation for another time. But Matt, White at third, you're good with that?
I have no issues, especially if Trey's at first. Just ask Jordan Thompson from last year. His error count would have been double had it not been for Trey. So, but I don't think that Tommy's also a walking error either. There was that ball that was, that he made the errant throw on. I mean, that was a tough play regardless. I mean, I don't even think if the throw's good, he gets him. It's tough. And I'm not worried about him at all. He's 3 games behind everybody else anyway, and he hasn't played a ton of third already. So, just let him get there, and let's have that conversation midway through the season.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the broadcasters mentioned that maybe said that doesn't get brought up enough. You've heard people talk about Christian Little coming from Vanderbilt to LSU so that he could start, but how they mentioned that White came to LSU so he could play third base. Like he didn't feel like he may get that shot at North Carolina State. Obviously, I don't know that depth chart, but one of the reasons he specifically came, besides all the other reasons, was to get a ton of time at third base. So I thought the A&M broadcasters actually did a pretty good job this weekend. I was pretty impressed. They brought up some pretty good stuff. I think we're spoiled with Ben and Rance, but they did a good job. All right, Jacob, let's see. Something needs to happen with Thompson. Here we go. Yes, his defense has been so much better than last year. I mean, I totally agree 100%. But it was supposed to be a lot more improved at the plate, and he seems a little bit worse. So I'm going to have to disagree a little bit with you there too, Jacob. Look, Thompson is probably a 275 hitter. If you ask all three of us, what would you expect Jonathan Thompson to hit on the year? I don't think he's going to hit 250. I don't think he's going to hit 315. I think he's going to hit about 280. And that's kind of right where he is. He was on my get right list, and I haven't done the final stats for the weekend in terms of Thompson, but I bet he hit around 300 for the weekend. Defensively, I think he's been great. Matt, in terms of Thompson, he's down in the order. Obviously, he's had some pop in the past. We haven't seen it as of yet, but any issues with Thompson in terms of his plate approach or that comment we just saw pop up on the screen right there?
Listen, Thompson, let's not forget who started the spark in the second game there for LSU. Thompson, when guys weren't hitting, he got that little base hit and got the ball rolling. Thompson is an important piece, and he always seems to kind of when everybody else isn't hitting, he'll knock a little single or he'll draw an important walk and kind of get them going. But the arm is elite, the glove is much improved, and that's an important position in the SEC to be really good defensively is the shortstop position. And maybe somebody might hit for a better average, but can they do that with the glove and the arm? That's an important factor in this game.
Alex, your take on Thompson? Obviously, much improved. I mean, he's made a couple plays recently that I've been like, wow. I think he made one today actually coming in on a slow roller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that throw. Yeah, to where I was like, now I did get aggravated when he bobbled that double play, and it didn't matter because LSU started losing. And I was like, the double play where he went to turn it with Dugas, I was like, oh my goodness. But he's got the hose, as you said, Matt. But Alex, your thoughts on him at the plate and that comment with regards to Thompson there?
Yeah, I'm a huge Jordan Thompson fan. Jordan Thompson is going to be in this lineup every day. Jay Johnson said at the beginning of the season, and maybe he's having a little bit of struggles at the plate, but like you said, Chris, he's not a 300 hitter. He's not Dylan Cruz, right? You don't need him to be Dylan Cruz. You're not expecting him to be Dylan Cruz. You're expecting him to hit, like you said, 275, 280, and maybe get 8 or 9 home runs and bring in some RBI, and I think that's exactly what he is, and I think that's exactly what he has been.
Yeah, so I ran the numbers real quick, so if y'all are wondering what was going on back here. So Thompson was 3 for 13 on the weekend. The biggest outlier, look, 1 from 3, I'll take that every day from him. 2 for 5, I'll take that every day from him. But on Saturday, he was 0 for 5. So that collar stands out. 3 for 13, which is 231. We'll round up on this show. So not great. 2 walks and 3 Ks. So it wasn't like he punched out 6 times, It just, I think people, when he's down in the order, you're right. He has a job to do. His job is to turn the lineup over, but he's still a veteran presence down there. I think he can extend at bats. And sometimes he pops up when you don't expect him. But as long as he hits 275, I would love to see him repeat 6 to 8 home runs again. I think that's right where he's at. We haven't seen that yet. And as long as he keeps playing defense like that, then I have no problem with him there. Because we got 7 other guys that can swing it, just like y'all said. All right, I think that's it for the comments and the questions on this episode here as we're done. I want to thank Matt and Alex for stepping in here on the live edition, the instant analysis of the 60 Feet 6 Inches LSU podcast, as LSU takes 2 out of 3 on the road versus A&M. Amazing series coming up at the box as Arkansas comes to town, and we have Tennessee come to town. We didn't talk about it, but just so everybody knows, I'm going to get these guys, I'm going to get their last take real quick on this. SEC rundown. I almost signed off the show without going over this. SEC rundown. Florida takes 2 out of 3. Vandy sweeps Ole Miss. Oh, okay. Tennessee gets swept, as my son just told me. I think Arkansas sweeps Auburn. Kentucky sweeps State. Kentucky demolishes Mississippi State. They have no pitching over there, it seems like. USC sweeps Georgia on the road. We could probably talk 30 minutes, all 3 of us between this. Man, I'm a little flustered now after hearing that. Right? Tennessee cost me a lot of money this weekend. I swear to God.
No, man, that's the Missouri.
A sweep to Missouri. All right, Matt. Out of those, just pick. I don't know if you can just pick one. I think I know where you're going. Alex, I may have to have you take another one. Matt, surprises from the SEC this weekend? Where are you going?
It's not the Tennessee one. I thought that could happen just because of the time of year. The first series, it's on the road. It's ugly. The big one for me is Vanderbilt because while they've played much better competition, the offense is really struggling. Bradfield's really struggling. They go out and do that to Ole Miss. That was impressive.
Yeah, Alex, I thought Vanderbilt was going to struggle hitting all year. I put that in my preview when I was doing the SEC teams. But for Ole Miss offense to go in there and get shut down. But, Alex, you got Vandy, Ole Miss, Mizzou. How about USC on the road at Georgia? And then finally, Kentucky sweeps State. What stands out when you look at the SEC results this weekend?
I think for me, it's Kentucky and Mississippi State. And not just that they got swept, but just how dominant Kentucky was over State. Like Kentucky should never be that dominant against Mississippi State. Like, yeah, you lose a series, maybe you get swept occasionally, but not like that. Mississippi State is too proud a program. They're 2 years from a national championship, and they are just getting absolutely demolished, week in, week out. And they're just bad. They were bad last year, and I thought they were going to take a big step up this year, and they just haven't. And there's a lot of people in Starkville I know that are starting to call for Chris Lemonis's job.
Oh wow! Wow! Yeah, I knew State can swing it. their pitching has been suspect, but I had like Kentucky. I'm not gonna lie, I had Kentucky winning like 8 SEC, 7 SEC games because when I did the preview, they had to replace literally their whole 9. When I was like, who? Nobody was there, and the fact that
And they weren't that good then.
yeah, you're exactly right. And they were like 14-2 in non-conference. I thought it was a bunch of fool's gold. And then you look at their pitching staff. I'm like, they have like a sub. They have like right around a 3 ERA, and I'm like, this is not going to hold on. But obviously, it's freezing up there. It's freezing in Mizzou. But both teams got to play in it, and very impressive. And then South Carolina, I picked them to win 2 out of 3, but I didn't think they would take the sweep on the road at Georgia. Pretty impressive to me. But that just goes to show me that the SEC is parity is all over the place. And then the teams you think are not good, like Bama, people have been dogging on me for my Bama comments. You know, I picked Bama to go 15-15. They could have taken 2 from Florida, and it's going to be interesting this year. As Carl the Cat says, that Tony V got tossed in game 2. Interesting. So it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for the next 2 series at the box. But I want to thank. We're actually going to sign off this time. So I want to thank Matt and Alex for joining me. Look, make sure that y'all check out their stuff. Alex Day from the Weekend Rotation Podcast. It is at Radio Man Day. And obviously Matt Beard and his 2 compatriots over there at Spittin' Seeds 247 account. But his personal account is at LSU MAB11. Guys, I appreciate the time. Thank y'all for joining me very much. And so this will be linked on the Twitter account, YouTube version, and podcast as well. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, whoever sent in comments and questions. And we hope to keep this up throughout the season. I definitely want to get Matt and Alex back on, put those guys in the rotation. And until next time, y'all stay safe. And as always, go Tigers.